My family had never really gone anywhere together. We were the type who stuck to routine, work, school, chores, and then everyone collapsing in front of the TV at night. Vacations were things we only heard about from other people. But last winter, my father suddenly decided we should all take a trip together. He said it was time to do something different, to make memories before everyone got too busy with their own lives. The idea was met with mixed feelings. Some of us liked it. My sister was excited just at the thought of leaving the city. My mother was hesitant, worrying about the costs and the packing. And me, I didn't really care one way or another. Still, the plan stuck, and within a few weeks, my dad had booked a small guest house in the northern mountains. It was supposed to be peaceful there, a quiet valley surrounded by pine forests, far from traffic and noise. The guest house wasn't a fancy hotel, just a two-story wooden place run by an older couple. Online photos showed it had a big balcony overlooking the hills, a fireplace, and a garden with stone benches. My father said it would be exactly what we need. We left the city on a Friday morning, 3 cars packed with clothes, food, and blankets. The drive took nearly 8 hours. At first, the roads were smooth, but as we climbed higher, the streets became narrow, bending dangerously along the mountain edge. My cousins joked nervously. My mother gripped the seat tightly, and I kept staring out the window as the city disappeared behind us. By the time we reached the valley, the sun was setting. The place looked beautiful, mountains rising all around us, the smell of pine, sharp in the cold air. The guest house sat slightly apart from the small village nearby, surrounded by tall trees. It was larger than it looked online, with faded wooden walls and a tin roof that glimmered under the last rays of sunlight. When we pulled up, the owner, an elderly man with a stiff smile, came out to greet us. He looked friendly enough, though his eyes seemed tired, almost watchful. His wife stood at the doorway, her hands tucked into her shawl. She didn't say much, only nodded when we passed her. Something about the way she kept staring at us felt strange. Inside, the house smelled faintly of wood smoke and damp stone. The furniture was old but clean, wooden chairs, heavy curtains, and rugs that looked handmade. My sister said it felt cozy, but I noticed the walls had dark stains near the ceiling, and some of the floorboards creaked sharply under our feet. Still, everyone was relieved to finally arrive. After unloading the bags, we gathered in the common room to eat dinner. The old man had prepared simple food, rice, lentils, bread, and chicken curry. My father thanked him warmly, but I noticed again how the wife stayed silent, always hovering in the corner, as though she didn't want to sit with us. That night, after everyone had chosen their rooms, I stepped outside for some air. The cold hit me immediately, sharp enough to make me pull my jacket tighter. The valley was completely quiet, except for the faint rustle of trees. The village lights twinkled far away, but the guest house itself was surrounded by darkness. I stood there for a moment, staring at the black line of forest stretching behind the house. The trees swayed lightly, and for some reason, I felt uneasy, like something was hidden just out of sight. I shook the feeling off and went back inside, convincing myself it was only the strangeness of a new place. But later, as I lay in bed listening to the creaks and groans of the old house, I realized something. In the silence between the noises of the wood, I thought I could hear faint footsteps outside, circling slowly around the house. I told myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. The next morning, the valley looked different in daylight. The air was fresh and cold, and a layer of fog curled between the trees. From the balcony, we could see the mountains rising like walls around us. My cousins ran in the garden, their laughter echoing against the stillness. For a while, it almost felt like a real vacation, like this was what my father had imagined when he planned it. After breakfast, some of us decided to explore the village while others stayed behind. The road into town was just a dirt path lined with stone walls and chickens wandering freely. The villagers were polite, though quiet, and we bought some snacks and firewood before heading back. But when we returned to the guest house, something odd happened. My mother went straight to her room and frowned. "Who opened the window?" she asked. The curtains were blowing in the cold wind, but she swore she had left them shut when we left. My father brushed it off, saying maybe the old couple had come in to tidy. But when we asked the owner later, he shook his head firmly. No, we never go into guest rooms once they are given," he said. His wife, who was standing behind him, lowered her eyes, and said nothing. The rest of the day passed quietly. We ate lunch together and walked near the forest edge. But by evening, the atmosphere inside the guest house began to change. The shadows stretched long in the hallways, and the air grew colder than outside, even with the fireplace lit. At dinner, the old man joined us briefly, but his wife again kept her distance. She only came to place dishes on the table, never speaking. Once, I caught her watching me from the doorway, her face partly hidden by her shawl. Her expression was blank, but her eyes seemed sharp, almost warning. That night, everyone went to bed earlier than usual, tired from the long day. I shared a room with my cousin, while my sister and younger cousins slept in the adjoining room. We left a small lamp on because the hallway outside was completely dark once the fire died down. For a while, everything was fine. The house made its usual creaks as it settled, and I could hear the muffled sound of my relatives talking in the next room. But around midnight, I woke up to a sound that didn't belong. It was faint at first, like fabric brushing against wood. Then it became clearer. Footsteps, slow, heavy footsteps moving down the hallway outside our room. I sat up in bed, holding my breath. My cousin stirred and looked at me, wide-eyed. He had heard it too. The steps stopped right outside our door. We didn't move. The silence was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Then, suddenly, the door handle rattled. It wasn't gentle, like someone testing it. It was sharp, deliberate, like whoever it was wanted to come inside. My cousin whispered, "Is it your dad?" But I shook my head. My father's footsteps were heavier, more rushed. These were slow, careful, like someone who didn't want to be noticed. After a few seconds, the rattling stopped. The footsteps moved away, fading down the hallway. We waited, frozen, until we heard another sound. This time, from the room where my sister and the younger cousins were sleeping. A soft thump, like something had fallen. Then the faint creak of a door opening. I jumped out of bed and rushed to their room. The door was half open, swinging slightly. My sister sat up, confused, rubbing her eyes. "Why did you open the door?" she asked. "I didn't," I said. The window in their room was wide open, the curtain fluttering in the cold night air. My stomach dropped. My father came out of his room at that moment, asking what was going on. I told him someone had been in the hallway, that the window was open, that I was sure someone had tried our door. He checked every room, every lock, even went outside with a flashlight. But there was nothing. No footprints in the soft soil, no sound from the forest, nothing to prove what we heard. Still, when we gathered back in the living room, no one laughed it off. Everyone was tense, silent. My mother kept staring at the window as if expecting something to appear. Before going back to bed, the old man knocked gently on our door. He looked serious, almost nervous. "You should keep your windows closed at night," he said quietly. "And don't leave the lights off." I wanted to ask him what he meant, but he had already turned away, his wife waiting at the bottom of the stairs, watching us again with that same unreadable expression. That was the moment I realized. Whatever we had heard wasn't just our imagination, and the owners of the house, they already knew something was wrong. The next morning, everyone tried to act normal. My father joked during breakfast, my cousins argued over who would get the balcony room, and the younger kids played outside. But under all of that, I could feel the uneasiness. No one wanted to talk about what had happened the night before, yet everyone was thinking about it. Even my mother, who usually tried to calm everyone, looked pale. She kept checking the locks on the windows and asking if anyone had noticed strange noises. Later that day, the old man's wife spoke for the first time. She was standing near the kitchen door when she quietly asked my mother, "You didn't leave anything outside last night, did you?" My mother frowned. "No. Why?" The woman didn't answer. She just pressed her lips together, lowered her eyes, and went back into the kitchen. That silence felt heavier than any explanation. By evening, dark clouds rolled in over the mountains, and a storm began. Rain hammered the tin roof, and the trees outside bent under the wind. The electricity went out briefly, leaving the whole guest house lit only by flickering candles and the fireplace glow. We gathered in the common room, playing cards and trying to distract ourselves. But around 10 p.m., the rain suddenly stopped, almost unnaturally, like someone had shut it off. The silence after the storm felt thick, pressing against the windows. That night, everyone decided to sleep earlier. The adults wanted the kids together, so my cousin, sister, and I all shared one room. The lamps were left on, just as the old man had suggested. For a while, it was quiet, just the occasional drip of rain outside. I almost started to believe nothing would happen. But sometime after midnight, I woke to a sound that made my chest tighten. Knocking. It came from the far end of the hallway, slow and deliberate. 3 sharp knocks that echoed through the wooden walls. Everyone else stirred awake, their eyes wide in the dim light. My father opened the door and looked out, but the hallway was empty. He told us to stay inside and went to check with my uncle. Minutes later, while we were still whispering nervously, the knocking came again, this time much closer, right outside our room. Bang, bang, bang. The sound was so loud it shook the door in its frame. My sister screamed, and one of my younger cousins started crying. My father came rushing back, trying to calm everyone down, but even he looked terrified. He yanked the door open. Nothing. The hallway stretched empty, the lamps still glowing weakly. No footsteps, no movement, just silence. Then, from the floor above us, we all heard it, dragging. Something heavy being pulled across the wooden boards. Slow, scraping sounds, moving from one end of the house to the other. My uncle grabbed a flashlight and motioned for my father to follow. Against my mother's protests, they went upstairs. We could hear their footsteps creaking above us, then their voices calling out. But when they came back down, their faces were pale. "There's nothing up there," my uncle said. "No furniture moved, no one hiding." We all gathered in the living room after that, too afraid to stay in our separate rooms. The kids huddled on the couches, and the adults tried to keep calm, but the house itself didn't let us rest. Around 3 a.m., the scratching started. It came from the walls, long, slow strokes, like nails dragging across the wood. First on one side of the house, then another, circling us. The sound grew louder near the windows, as if someone, or something, was moving outside, clawing its way around the building. The worst moment came when my aunt, who was sitting near the fireplace, suddenly gasped. She pointed at the tall window beside her. "There! Someone's there!" she shouted. We all turned. For just a second, I saw it too. A tall, dark figure pressed close against the glass, face hidden in shadow. My uncle leapt up and ran outside, flashlight cutting through the dark. We heard the porch steps creak under his weight, then the door slam shut behind him. Seconds later, his voice echoed back, shaking with confusion. "There's no one here!" But I knew what I'd seen. We all had. By the time dawn came, no one had slept. The old man found us huddled together in the living room, our faces pale, our voices low. He didn't ask what happened. He only said, in that same quiet, serious tone, "You should leave the valley before nightfall." The morning after the second night felt heavier than the storm itself. No one touched breakfast. My father and uncle kept whispering in the corner, trying to decide what to do, while my mother quietly packed our clothes into bags. Even the younger cousins, who usually ran around making noise, sat silently on the couches, their eyes still wide with leftover fear. The old man was waiting for us outside when we stepped into the cold air. His face looked tired, as though he hadn't slept either. He didn't ask questions, didn't pretend nothing had happened. He simply said, "It's best you go back today." That was all the confirmation we needed. Within an hour, the cars were loaded. The idea was to leave before evening, before the valley grew dark again. But just as we were about to drive, my father turned the key in the ignition and frowned. The car didn't start. He tried again. Nothing. My uncle's Jeep wouldn't start either. At first, we thought it was just the cold mountain air, but the engines were fine. The fuel tanks were half full. Still, no matter how many times they tried, neither car turned over. The old man stood near the porch, watching us quietly. When my father asked if he could help, he only shook his head slowly. "If they don't want you to leave tonight," he said, "you won't leave." We didn't understand what he meant. My father grew angry, demanding answers, but the old man wouldn't say more. His wife came out briefly, setting a small oil lamp on the porch railing, and whispered, "Keep light near you. Don't let the house go dark." That night, everyone was tense. We gathered in the living room again, The lamps and candles lit, the fireplace burning as high as we could make it. No one wanted to go near the windows. No one wanted to go upstairs. Around midnight, the sounds began again. At first, it was faint knocking, distant like before, but then it spread. Knocks on every wall, every window, in no pattern, surrounding us. The house echoed with it, sharp and insistent. The kids cried, my mother prayed under her breath, and my father tried to act calm, though his hands shook. Then came the footsteps, not outside this time, but inside. Clear, heavy steps on the upstairs floorboards, walking back and forth, slow, deliberate, as if pacing above us. My uncle grabbed a thick wooden stick from the fireplace and marched to the stairs, but when he reached the top, the sound stopped. The hallway was empty, shadows stretching long under the dim lamps. He came back down, but the moment he did, the footsteps started again, this time on the staircase itself, one slow step after another, descending toward us. We all stared at the stairs, but when the last creak sounded, there was no one there. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. We were frozen, waiting, listening. That's when my sister gasped. She was pointing at the window nearest the fireplace. There, pressed against the glass, was a pale hand, thin, long fingers spread wide, dragging slowly down the pane. We all screamed. My uncle rushed forward, yanking the curtains shut, but when he opened the door to check, the porch was empty. No footprints, no wet marks, nothing. We thought it was over, but then the scratching began again. Only this time, it wasn't on the walls. It was coming from inside. The sound scraped across the ceiling above us, nails or claws dragging against the wood. It circled slowly, moving from one end of the room to the other, then stopping directly over where we sat huddled. We stared up, hearts pounding, as dust began to fall lightly from the ceiling. That was when the lamp nearest the window flickered, once, twice, then went out. My mother grabbed it, shaking it desperately, but the light wouldn't return. One by one, the other lamps started to dim, as though something was pulling the energy out of the room. The last lamp flickered weakly, the only glow left between us, and complete darkness. That's when we heard the whisper. It came from the corner of the room, low and rough, as if someone was crouched just out of sight. The words were unclear, broken, but they chilled me more than the knocking, the footsteps, or the scratching. Because whatever it said, it spoke my name. When the voice whispered my name, every hair on my body stood on end. I froze, staring at the dark corner of the room, but there was nothing there, only shadows shifting with the faint glow of the last lamp. My mother pulled me close, trembling, while my uncle moved in front of us with the wooden stick, as if that could protect us from something we couldn't even see. No one spoke. We were all listening, waiting. The silence pressed down on us like a weight. Then, the whisper came again. Louder this time, and not just my name, others too. One by one, it spoke the names of my cousins, my sister, my father. The voice was rough, uneven, almost like it was forcing its way through the walls of the house. And then the last lamp went out. Darkness swallowed the room, complete, suffocating darkness. The kids screamed, and someone fumbled for matches, but before we could light anything, the footsteps started again. Not upstairs, not outside, inside the living room. The sound was impossible to mistake, heavy steps moving slowly across the wooden floor, circling us in the dark. My cousin grabbed my arm so hard his nails dug into my skin, but I couldn't move. None of us could. We were trapped in that circle of sound, the footsteps pacing closer, closer, until they stopped right in front of where I sat. I swear I could feel it, the presence of someone standing there, breathing lightly in the dark, watching me. Then the screaming started. My younger sister shrieked that something had touched her shoulder. One of my cousins yelled that he felt fingers grab his ankle. Chaos broke out in the pitch black, people shouting, crying, stumbling into each other. The whole house shook with noise, the pounding on the walls, the scratching from the ceiling, the windows rattling violently as if trying to break. Finally, my uncle managed to light a candle. The small flame flickered weakly, casting trembling shadows across the room. We all huddled close to it, as if that single light was the only thing keeping us safe. But then, without warning, the front door slammed open. The candle went out in the rush of cold air, and for a split second, I saw it. Something tall standing in the doorway. Not fully visible, just an outline darker than the night outside. Long arms, a head bent slightly too low, like it was leaning to fit into the frame. My father grabbed us, shouting for everyone to run. We didn't think. We didn't look back. We just ran, out the back door, through the wet grass, across the garden. The old man was standing on the porch, holding another lamp, his face pale. He didn't stop us. He just raised the lamp higher, as if keeping whatever it was away. We ran until the guest house was far behind us, until our lungs burned and our legs ached. We crammed into the cars again, even though we knew they wouldn't start. My father tried one last time, turning the key, and this time the engine roared to life. No one asked how, no one cared. Both cars started, and within minutes we were tearing down the narrow mountain road, not daring to look back at the house. We didn't stop until we reached the nearest town, hours away. When the sun finally rose, we sat in a small roadside hotel, exhausted, pale, and silent. No one talked much on the way home. It was like we all agreed silently that speaking about it would make it worse. But even in the city, away from the valley, the memory never left. The worst part came weeks later, when my mother said something I'll never forget. She told me that during the last night, in the darkness before the candle lit, she had opened her eyes for a second. She swore she saw a tall figure crouched right behind me, its face near my ear, whispering my name.